Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, D-Generation X proudly brings to you its WWF Tag Team Champions of the World. The Road Dogg, Jesse James, the Badass Billy Gunn, the New Age Outlaws. And of course, if you're not down with that, we just got two words for ya. I just always wanted to do that. Today I want to talk about why Gen Z are actually getting into physical media. Because I'm a millennial and a lot of people in my generation and prior to my generation, so Gen X and all the generations before that, baby boomers and so on, grew up with physical media or at least have physical media available to them over the years. Gen Z is really where it started to become not available in terms of, rental stores and stuff like that. Now, you could still buy it, it's always been there, but streaming was pretty much the prominent sort of enjoyment to access your content from about 2010 onwards, when iTunes and all those things, Netflix was still there, or like just beginning to really take off. So streaming services have really been a big part of Gen Z's life. And I know there are older Gen Z. I know there's Gen Z from like 99 and so on. I know they could be argued to be like post-millennials, but I know Gen Z is arguable when it actually started. So there might be Gen Z who grew up with physical media. But for a large part of Gen Z, I'm talking about like the 2000s kids. A lot of those kids didn't really grow up with physical media around. Now, some did, some had games, some had physical media available to them. But in terms of the widestream overall, physical media wasn't this big thing in the 2010s or even like early 2020s or late 2010s because streaming had already taken off. Streaming had arrived essentially. Now, given there are other avenues, there's piracy and all this other stuff, what I'm talking about is why Gen Z is starting to get this nostalgia of going back to older stuff. I've seen a lot of Gen Z even going back and buying stuff like, it's not a Discman, but, this is from Kmart in Australia. A lot of Gen Z are going back buying this sort of stuff because they didn't experience it. And this is why physical media, in my belief, is taking off. And that's going to fall. But this is why physical media is taking off. Because in terms of a resurgence, now some people are saying, oh, it's not resurging, it's lower than it's ever been in the history of physical media. Doesn't matter. What I'm saying is the numbers are picking up with Gen Z year after year, and that's shown in stats. I've looked at the stats. There is a trend of upwards interest in physical media. And why is that? Well, Gen Z just didn't experience physical media, at least to the same extent millennials did, where we had rental shops, we had places you could go and buy. We actually experienced the formats. We actually experienced VHS to DVD, DVD to Blu-ray, Blu-ray to 4K. Whereas Gen Z really only had available to them really Blu-ray, and even after that, streaming. I mean, 4K, yes, they can get into 4K. But what I'm seeing the trend of is a lot of Gen Z are going back and buying DVDs, not mainly the Blu-ray and 4K portions, because those are available on streaming. A lot of the Gen Zs, I'm going to call them post-millennials, a lot of the Gen Zs are not buying the more expensive formats. They're going back and buying like bargain shops, and not bargain shops, but like, what's it called? Like the Salvos and like CEX for $1 and all these other things. They're not buying the more expensive ones. They're buying the cheap ones because what a lot of people forget is that, let's say somebody wanted to watch, what's a movie here? Like, just say Star Wars, Attack of the Clones, or, no, Phantom Menace. Let's just say someone wanted to watch The Phantom Menace, and they didn't want to pay $10 a month for Disney Plus, or $20 a month, whatever Disney Plus is now for that option. Well, you could go to a shop like Savers in Australia, and I got this copy, the special edition, like, I think it's limited edition or something. I got this version with 2 discs in it, all the special features, for like $1.99. And if you're one of those fans of Star Wars that know you're going to watch it over and over again, rinse, repeat, that's actually a really good deal, because you know that, okay, I could pay $20 a month for Disney Plus over the next year, which would be what, $240 over the course of a year, $240 in Australia, or whatever it is, if I'm going off $20 a month. Or, if I know I'm just going to get it for Star Wars, I could go out and buy Star Wars for like $2 a piece and have Star Wars. And also, the thing about that is, I can kind of have that experience as well. I have the digibook, I have the special features, I have everything there, I have everything that I want in Star Wars. Now, given some people will say, oh, but if I'm going to do that, I could buy the 4K. 4K essentially is getting along the same lines as streaming in this day and age, because 4K is expensive. 4K is a lot more considerable when you're trying to invest in it, when you're trying to get back into it and be like, you know what, I need to have all the physical media on 4K. You get into this mindset of, okay, this costs more than streaming. It's not viable for a younger audience. And keep in mind, the younger audience are not big earners yet. Some of them may be content creators. I'm not saying everyone is poor in Gen Z. I'm just saying that most of Gen Z are still trying to find their way in the workplace. So they're not going to have all this disposable income that they could just throw at 4K. Some might, but most will not. So when you look at something like a DVD where you can get for $1 at the Salvos or CEX or Savers or wherever else they sell DVDs these days, it's a lot more viable of a solution where a Gen Z can look at that and say, you know what, I just want Star Wars. And I can pay $2 and have Star Wars. And the best thing is I own it. And this is another reason why Gen Z, I believe, are coming back to physical media. That physical interaction with their movies, like Revenge of the Sith. They have that physical interaction, something that they hold. Now, so much of Gen Z will have grown up in iPads and all this other stuff where it's just all available to them at the press of a button. And they have it there and it's there. But there's a big difference between the press of a button, and this is just the light thing, by the way. But there's a big difference between the press of a button and something that you actually hold, that you can actually see the characters you love on the front of, that you can actually pull out and say, you know what, I'm going to have a read of that. And you know what, I do want to see what the special features are. I do want to watch those special features. I want to have a look at the special features of how it was made, of why they did certain things. I want to see Lucas doing interviews in 2003 about what this thing was meant to be and what it turned out to be and how it worked to his expectations or didn't work to his expectations. I want to see that. And then you also have audio options, obviously. Audio options are another thing. Director commentaries, a lot of that is kind of not on streaming. There are some streaming services that do include it, not all of them. But if you want director's commentary, another reason. I want to hear what, like, Peter Jackson said about Lord of the Rings when he was directing it, and I want to know exactly what, Steven Spielberg was saying when he did Jurassic Park. I need to know that. Or even DTS. I want the sound as it was heard in cinemas and unaltered with 4Ks and restorations, and I want it left alone. That's a big appeal for a Gen Z coming into the collecting space and saying, you know what? I don't need 4K. I don't need Blu-ray. I don't even need streaming. If I just have my 10 favorite movies, I can watch all the clips on social media anyways, really. Like a lot of Gen Z, I've seen this trend of Gen Z just getting the highlights on social media, on TikTok, on Instagram, wherever the kids are these days. I'm such an old geezer. But there is a lot of Gen Z who can watch it any way they want. But then you come to movies that are no longer or not available on streaming unless you buy them, like Spice World. Now, a lot of Gen Z are getting into the Spice Girls or are into the Spice Girls or are trying to figure out what the 90s was about. So movies like Spice World are a big appeal for someone saying, you know what, I'm going to go out and buy Spice World. It may be a bit more expensive because it's a collector's item, but I want to buy Spice World. I want to see what Spice World is about. And it's not really available easily on streaming unless I buy it. I could buy a digital copy, or I could go and buy it from eBay for like $30 or whatever and have it, and then it's mine. I think a lot of Gen Z are doing that. I think a lot of Gen Z are just like, yeah, you know what? I want to experience that, and I think I'm going to like it. I think it's going to be. They'll do their research, do their research into trailers and what it looks like, and do you want to have that movie in the collection? I think Gen Z are a bit more cautious with this sort of stuff and being like, yeah, you know what? I can pay $30 for that. I think that's pretty cool. I want that. I think that's a big appeal. Movies you just can't get on streaming. And also spontaneity. Because, believe it or not, I think Gen Z get a bad knock. And I think a lot of people say, oh, Gen Z just aren't going out and doing anything. Gen Z just aren't. They're just staying home, bubble wrapped and staying home. I think that's a falsehood. I think Gen Z are trying to connect with arts and stuff like that in a way that's kind of counterculture. Because the culture right now is streaming. The culture is, okay, everything's online. You can access everything online. Go and watch everything online. But I think a lot of Gen Z are rebelling against that and saying, you know what, I don't want to be monitored. I don't want to be the product. I don't want to have ads catered to me when I'm watching Stranger Things and saying, oh, you can buy this food because we saw that you looked up an ad while you were on this service and you were watching this, so you must love this. I think a lot of people and a lot of Gen Zs don't like feeling like they're being marketed to. And a DVD is, yes, you're kind of being marketed to beyond up to the initial sale. Like if you wanted to watch the Brady Bunch, yes, you have to purchase the Brady Bunch. You are being marketed to. They have to put a lot of thought into the artwork. They need to put a lot of thought into the back cover. You are being marketed to. But not to the same extent that it is online, where you're constantly the product, where it's like, oh, you like Stranger Things, so why not watch the Human Centipede? Because everyone loves those two things together. But, you know, I'm not saying that they're recommending ads for the Human Centipede on Stranger Things. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. But I'm just saying that, you know, these are the type of things where they will put stuff in front of you that you don't want. And if you're just watching Strange Things, it can take you out of it. Or if you're just watching The Boys, it can take you out of it on Amazon. Or if you're watching whatever, The Office on whatever streaming service The Office is on now, it takes you out of it when they pop up, oh, you like The Office, you might like Bewitched, or you might like, what else is there? South Park, or whatever. You might like those, you might like the recommendations, but I think a lot of Gen Z are also waking up to the whole thing of what was it like before this, before streaming, before recommendations from an algorithm? What was it like? And you've seen pickups in places like Reddit where they're asking like, hey, can we get recommendations for films? Or like people come to my channel and say like, hey, what's your favorite films? I see a lot of trends into my like top movies of all time on these old videos. I see a lot of views coming to those because a lot of Gen Zs are starting to look for people online, like on YouTube saying, oh, well, what's the good movies? I want to know what the good movies are. I haven't watched the good movies. You would be surprised how many people I've heard from in terms of Gen Z who have never watched Child's Play, who have never watched Dawn of the Dead, who have never watched, outside of the MCU, who have never watched the old Marvel movies, you know, have never went back and watched stuff like the Punisher, have never went back and watched the Hulk, the original Hulk with, you know, not the original Hulk, the Eric Bana movie, and yes, the Lou Ferrigno one as well. There are so many people, and that's a TV show, in all fairness, um, there are a lot of Gen Z who just haven't watched this content, who haven't watched these movies, and are starting to figure out what kind of movies do I want to watch? What kind of movies am I into? What kind of movies will define me? Like, there are people and kids now who get into the trend of like, I need to understand what the Terminator was about. And everyone says this version is pretty bad, so like, what is the good version? Tell me. And but for the good version of Terminator 2, a lot of people do have conflicting issues with the 4K. People say the Lionsgate Blu-ray from 2016 is the way to go. I personally am along the line of, if you're going to do that, just go back to the DVD where you get all the editions in stuff like this, and you get like all of those editions. So I'm just like, I'll just go back to DVD. And there are even things about, oh, people prefer VHS. If you really want that old school kick, go and buy a CRT. CRT is those old tube TVs, the big ones, the old TVs, they're like square. Just, I'm explaining it for Gen Z guys. I know I'm sounding old here. And a VCR, VHS player. I know a lot of people call it a VHS player, it's a VCR. But then you put the tape in, experience it that way. If that's what you truly want, that's the way you do it. That's also another thing that you don't get in the streaming age for Gen Z. Optionality. And a lot of times it's just like, oh, well, it's streaming now. You can watch this version or you can watch nothing. There you go. And a lot of Gen Z are like, well, what if I want to watch the extended cut? What if I want to watch director commentary? What if I want to watch the special features? Where is all this content that I want to watch as the consumer? And I think a lot of people, a lot of Gen Z are along that line of, you know what? Optionality is on DVD. Optionality, yes, it's on 4K, it's on Blu-ray. But in terms of cheap entry level that I just need to chuck it in when I want to watch something, I think Gen Z are just saying, you know what? DVD is good enough. And it's cheap, and it won't break the bank. And I can get pretty much all my favorite movies for under 100. I think a lot of Gen Z are looking at it that way. And that's only if you're counting like, okay, if the more privileged Gen Z ones, the ones who have jobs and are at those high paying levels already, they might get into 4K. They might say, you know what? I can collect, I don't know what's happening with my throat. I can collect all my favorites on DVD, collect some of my favorites on Blu-ray, and then 4K I'll save for like the Titanics, and you'll be surprised how many Gen Zs have not seen Titanic. I'm constantly seeing this trend online of there is a lot of people in Gen Z who have not seen Titanic. And I don't know why. I think it's just because it was the biggest film of all time, and it's got kind of that aura of like Gone with the Wind now, where it's the biggest movie of a generation, of its era. And a lot of people are just like, seems too mainstream for me. I don't really want to watch that. But that's what I mean, like, Gen Z are figuring out what they like. And I think that's another thing. You get to find new movies going through the bargain bins of, Salvos or Savers or whatever. You get to go through all those and have a look and say, like, yeah, okay, what's this one? I'll just grab someone off the shelf, or like, let's just look at a DVD. I'll just grab a DVD, and what's something that a lot of Gen Z may not have watched? Let me just quickly go behind the camera, and I'll tell you. So if I look over here, and you know what, you can come with me. You can come right with me, because it's not going to turn, but I'm just going to have a look here, and this thing's going to turn back around. So yeah, I'm just going to look here. But if I look over here, and I'm just looking in this section, this little bit of section, I know I've got DVDs all over the place. I'm currently reorganizing. But I can look down the bottom and go like, here's one. A lot of people know Caesar Milan. You might find The Dog Whisperer for a cheap price, the original season, and be like, you know what? I like dogs. I like Caesar Milan. I want to see where it all began. This is not easily accessible in Australia on streaming services. I don't even think this is on Disney in Australia. And that's surprising. Caesar Milan, one of the biggest people from his era on, what's it called? Was he on Discovery Channel, or was he on... Doesn't say here, but I'm guessing he was on Discovery Channel or National Geographic in Australia or wherever. But a lot of people haven't seen the original Caesar Milan, like the original kind of seasons. A lot of kids haven't seen like Michael Jordan play back in the day. So, you find things like box sets like this, where you get to go back and see what Jordan was all about. And yes, you can get all that on YouTube. I know you can get it all on YouTube. But what I'm saying is, if you have the option to be like, you know what, I just want to put it on a rainy afternoon, don't have to turn on the internet, don't even have to interact with the internet. I think that's where a lot of Gen Z are starting to get into this trend of, let's come right back around here, because this looks ugly, that framing. There we go. So I think a lot of Gen Z are along that line of, you know what, I don't want to be on the internet for all my content. I want to have stuff that's offline. I don't want to be online all the time. I want to have it available to me at a second's notice, but I don't want to have a streaming service. I don't want to be online at all times. I don't want to be monitored at all times. Sometimes I just want to be off the radar, because I'm seeing this trend of Gen Z just not wanting to be online. And that's because since a very young age, a lot of Gen Z have just had their life fully online. So a lot of them being like, I wonder what it'd be like if I just got off Facebook, or a lot of them aren't on Facebook, if I just got off TikTok for a week and just seeing what happens with my body and how I react. I think that's a big draw of what's happening at the moment. Physical media is picking up because it's something new. It's old to people like me, like millennials. It's old to us because we saw the changing of the eras. We saw the changing of the guard from VHS to DVD and all that. We saw it all. We lived it. I was saying with family members recently that, I experienced CD players, and I experienced all that stuff. I experienced Walkmans. I experienced iPods when iPods came along, and it was like, I remember MP3 players when they had 25 or 28 megabytes or 32 megabytes of storage, and you could fit 28 songs on it, and it was revolutionary because you didn't have to carry around a CD or tape with you. The battery was built in, it had lithium ion battery, and it was the biggest thing. Like, it was like, oh, this is revolutionary. This is major. MP3, you didn't care about the audio quality, because it was like, oh, I've got all my music in my pocket now. That's pretty cool. I saw that changing. I saw that happening. I lived it. We all lived it as millennials and so on. And now Gen Z didn't live it. So they're going back trying to figure out what it was all about. And so that's why you're seeing some things happen that way with Gen Z, where they're going backwards. Why like millennials and other people are like, oh, we lived it, we can go and collect 4K because it's the best we've seen. And also, as I said, the income brackets and stuff like that, like, a lot of people are starting to really come along the lines of like, okay, buy what you can afford. You want to watch Star Wars? You can afford a DVD. Buy the DVD. There's nothing wrong with the DVD. And yes, it's not going to look as fancy as a shiny 4K on your 4K TV, but for most people, it upscales okay. On a modern TV, it upscales. And especially with all this AI stuff coming in now, I've seen Sony with their games are upscaling AI driven. It's just going to pick up in the next couple of years. And as a piece of fluff flies through, people say there's ghosts in my videos and it's just like all this fluff flying around. But as I look around, there is so much here where I think a Gen Z can really like learn a thing or two from collectors like me, from collectors like Jeff from Films at Home, where they can, or I think he goes by Jeff Ruzio now. I think that's what his channel goes by. I should really stop calling him Films at Home because he doesn't really use Films at Home anymore. And Serial at Midnight as well. Go watch Serial at Midnight. Go and watch Angry Video Game Nerd. There are so many collectors online. Metal Jesus for games. So there's so many collectors out there who Gen Z are watching and learning from and being like, oh, I wonder what this guy would do with collection. I don't know if I'll collect all that, but, you know, maybe he has a point about going out and collecting all the original South Parks and not the Blu-ray versions. Maybe that's the way to go, because South Park, yeah, I could watch the shiny new restored version, and yeah, it's cool to have the best it's ever looked, best it's ever been. You don't want anything else besides this. But sometimes you just want to have South Park, the original season, and in its original form, just as it was intended when it was released. And, you know, sometimes you just want that. And sometimes with these older releases, you also get the artwork and stuff like that, you know? You get all of these artworks, you know? So that's also pretty cool as well. I think there's a disc loose, so hold on one second, I got to catch that. I don't know why it's come loose. It's alright. Nothing bad with that. But, you know, you get the full artwork and stuff like that. You don't get that with streaming. You don't get the experience of a show you love. You don't get that experience of, oh, here's something I love, and I can watch it. And I've got all the episode list. I've got everything I need here. I can watch it. I can experience it. I can do all of that stuff. And I have the experience of like, oh, here's a little added bonus of artwork and episode listings and all that other stuff. And I can choose. I can pick and choose. I don't have something recommending me all the time. Hey, go and buy KFC while you're watching the show because KFC have ads on here or whatever. I think that's why Gen Z are getting back into it. But maybe I'm wrong. Gen Z, if you're watching my videos, tell me in the comments down below. And even millennials, what are you recognizing with, like, a lot of you may have kids who are in Gen Z, even like older generation, Gen X and stuff. You might have kids who are in that generation. Let me know what you're observing with that generation, Gen Z mostly, and maybe a bit of Gen Alpha as well. Let me know what you're seeing with that, in terms of physical media, because there is a resurgence going on. And I want to know why. I want to know why the new generation are getting into it. I have my thoughts on it, as I've said in this video, but maybe it's not that. Maybe you have different observations. Jump in those comments, let me know. Like, subscribe, drop a comment, hype the channel. Go and subscribe to, or follow my Instagram, Jamie Toomey Presents as well. I will be doing content on there at some point. It's just not my focus at the moment. But all my old content's back up on Instagram. You can go and follow it. So it is back there. I also got a Twitch channel that I'm thinking about doing stuff with. Same tag, Jamie Toomey Presents. I haven't done anything on there. I think I did one live recently and just tried it, but I don't know. It doesn't really... I don't know if I'm a Twitch guy. But it's there. If you want to follow it, I might do something on there, I might not. But yep, same. Just look for Jamie Toomey Presents. You'll find it all on whatever site you're on. Except I'm not on Twitter. I really need to get back on Twitter. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, but if you go back on Twitter, then you're a sellout because and so-and-so owns it. And I'm like, you don't think Mark Zuckerberg's monitoring everything we do on Instagram and all these other things? You don't think that... I think News Corp are maybe buying TikTok? You don't think they're going to monitor everything we're doing? Like, we're being monitored across the internet regardless of what we're on. I don't really care. But yeah, all my data's out there. I don't care. Let me know what you think. I'll put a couple of end screens, some of my older videos. Maybe you'll enjoy some of these videos. I'll put them over here. I don't know what I'm going to put here. I don't know. I kind of just make it up on the fly and be like, oh, you might like this video, you might not. But yeah, let me know. It's one of these videos here. And I'll just stare menacingly at the camera while you pick one.